Hey everyone, welcome. My name's Colin Mathis. I'm the gallery director here. And before we get started, I just wanted to remind you that Nathaniel Russell, who's giving this talk, has an exhibition down the hall in the Foundation Gallery. So make sure you check that out after the talk. And I'm really looking forward to this today. I've been following Nathaniel's work for easily over a decade. And a few years back, I got to see a couple of his works in Amsterdam, and that was a highlight of a group show. And so we do the Parkside National Print Exhibition every couple of years. And traditionally we have curators that are really rooted in, or we have jurors that are really rooted in academic institutions. And for this 29th, I wanted to find someone who also had all those academic chops and was a highly skilled printmaker, but seemed to have his work spread out into more of the culture at large. And that's where I wanted to invite Nathaniel to come be the juror. And he was gracious enough to do that and put up his own exhibition. And his work is really everywhere. You can find it on murals, posters, books, skateboards, shirts, set designs, commercial illustration. And it's also shown around the world in traditional art galleries and also more informal spaces. And what I appreciate about his work is that it's so sincere and poetic, and I think really strips things down to the essence, both in terms of mark making and design. And he explores themes of transcendence, our inner worlds, and our place and purpose on earth. So please welcome Nathaniel Russell.
Thanks, Colin. Thanks for coming, everybody. I'm Nathaniel Russell, and I'm going to talk to you about things I'm interested in, show you a lot of my work, and I would say if anyone has a question, feel free to shout it out. We don't have to wait or anything, but no pressure. So I make a lot of different kinds of work, like Colin was saying. I'm interested in a lot of different kinds of work. So I'm going to begin. I've never felt really comfortable with, I think, more traditional artist statements, and a lot of the language doesn't come naturally to me. I taught a workshop at the Indianapolis Art Center a couple of years ago about text and printmaking, and in my rush to sort of get ready for the talk, I kind of made a diagram of an artist statement rather than sort of prepare remarks, and it kind of still applies. This is definitely a big map of things that I think about or that are within me or that I'm interested in, and they're all connected and kind of inform one another, and I'll, maybe we'll talk about them as we move along here. For me, just a few big ones on here is, there's one right there in the middle that says jam econo. That's a phrase. There was a band in the 80s called the Minutemen. They're I guess they were a punk band, but they were a little bit more than that. But they had this philosophy of jam econo, which was you write your own songs, you drive the van, you book your own tours, you're self-sufficient, and you keep a low overhead, and then you're free, and you're in control of your destiny. And I feel like that's a big thing for me. Moving on. Okay, so this is my origin stories. When I was a little kid, I was really into Mad Magazine. And this is an artist, Al Jaffe. He drew for Mad Magazine from I don't know, the guy's 100 years old. So it's he's been drawing for them since the 50s. But I found this image and realized how much it still informs what I'm into today. And it's the two colors, keeping things simple. What can you say with a shape and two colors and some lines? Growing up, I was also very into comics and what you can say, in a single panel. I always had this I wanted to draw comics when I was a little kid, and this sort of twisted sense of humor of the Far Side especially really appealed to me. It just was like an alternative way of looking at life, and it kind of made you feel like you were it's subversive. It was like a subversive art in the Sunday comics when I was a kid. And I used to fantasize about just having like a single panel it's a painting, right? It's a piece of art. It's a single panel, but it's in this thing that you see every day. Growing up too, I grew up in the 80s and 90s, so it's like commercial illustration, graphic design, product packaging, and I remember going to school in 6th grade and seeing a kid wearing this T-shirt, and I was like, I was shocked. Like I was like, I don't know what a slime ball is. I don't know what it means, but that is such a cool drawing, and it was like this esoteric, like it was like some sort of symbol that it was mysterious to me. Later, I found out, I was like, oh, that's like a skateboarding wheel, right? And that's this famous graphic designer who does stuff for Santa Cruz. And I think about that. I remember that first day of 6th grade, and it's like the power of graphic design and power of just good drawing too. So I got really interested in skateboarding when I was a kid, and I feel like that was another way to sort of live in society and see things in a different way, like look at your environment in a different way, look at buildings, look at cracks in the sidewalk, but also be exposed to a lot of cool art. And a lot of skateboarders, when I was doing it a lot, would draw their own graphics, and then a lot of these were like high school dropouts who were just interested in art. And this is by Ed Templeton, who, these days is showing his work all over the world. But this sort of thing, like being exposed to this and being into this when I was 12 or 13 was real formative for me. And again, it's a silkscreen. What is it, 3 colors, 4 colors? Using that grain of the wood to come through to get that free color of sort of the flesh color. That's this like, it goes back to the Jamicano, like look, like especially with printmaking, how can you get that free extra color? How can you do a little less but get a little more from that? And I think about that all the time. And that sort of led me to think more about art. I went to Ball State University in Muncie, Indiana, and they had a robust printmaking program. And I had a really cool printmaking professor named David Johnson, who has a piece in the juried show down the hall. And he really exposed me to some like German expressionist woodcuts, German expressionist printmaking. There's a school called Die Brücke, the bridge, and they just, talk about sort of bohemian punk rocker stuff. It's like these weirdo Germans in the 20s, like making these, for lack of a better word, just like primitive, straightforward, quick woodcuts and this use of big black areas that I found really, really exciting, and how that carries over into like what a lot of Japanese printmakers were doing like centuries before. There's this idea that I was exposed to called the big black shape. It's like a compositional element. And once you think about it, you see it everywhere, especially like in these, we've all seen like the Edo period, like Japanese woodcuts of like Mount Fuji in the distance. It's like a big black Mount Fuji shape. Or a woman's hair. It's like this big black form, and how it sucks in your eye. It's like this magnet. And since then, I always think about what's the big shape? How is that big shape making something in me like vibrate and ring that bell? But I got really into how they used this wood, this found wood. This is not a nice piece of, oak that has been milled. This looks like a cast off from somebody making a shelf or something. But that immediacy of it, I just found really exciting and really freeing. And I find that those imperfections, those like where the wood won't agree with you, where it chips off. That is kind of where the magic is. Some people would call that like a happy accident. And to me, it's like an honest little bit of humanity in there. And I find that's an interest of mine, is I'm not interested in perfection. I'm not interested in pulling the most technically proficient print. I'm interested in like what part of that is a little bit human, and I'm very interested in like, I love drawing, love all kinds of drawing, and I was able to sort of put that through printmaking. And the thing that I love about that is, like if you're playing electric guitar, like everybody knows what an electric guitar is. And if you're playing the electric guitar, it sounds a certain way. And then if you have like a pedal, like a fuzz pedal or like a delay pedal or some kind of effects pedal, you plug it, your song through there and you play it. And it becomes this thing other than you. It's this thing that you made, but it's an extra version that you can't control and you couldn't have made. It's extra human. And that's how I think about printmaking. It's like you take this drawing and this idea, I put it through the woodcut pedal, and it becomes more than I could be. And it's also revealed to you. So it's like this thing that you're participating in and a little out of control of, and you get to also be like a receiver of it and a little bit of a viewer of it, which I find really exciting. I don't know if there's a lot of printmakers here, but I think if you're a printmaker, there's that feeling every time you pull that print and it's a good one. It's like, yes, that's such a good feeling, and you get to do it for the whole edition. Another big one for me, German expressionist Kathy Kollwitz, big black shape again, one color woodcut. Also got me really interested in hands. Again, big black shape sucking you in. I think this is a Munch woodcut. And again, for me, it's so simple. It's a big shape, again. There's maybe 2 lines in it, but the way that wood grain is there, and how much you can say with just a graceful, simple shape goes back to that economy of line, economy of shape, of drawing, that I find really exciting. This was another big one for me, Antonio Frasconi. He's originally from Uruguay, but he had a studio in Connecticut and Santa Barbara. Did a lot of all woodcuts, active for many years, but my printmaking professor exposed me to him when I was an undergrad and really blew my mind. Did a lot of children's books, did a lot of posters, did a lot of like stuff for like the library, labor movements, really sort of pushed forward that idea of printmaking and woodcut especially as like the democratic medium. It's one thing that really drew me to printmaking is I could make something, I could make 20 of them and give them to all my friends. Instead of having one painting sit at my mom's closet, I can give 40 of them and they might end up in Mexico or down the hall. Thing I love about Frasconi is his use of the wood grain, and again, just beautiful drawing in the way that he could sort of make that wood help him. Another big one for me is Karita Kent. I don't know, she seems to be having a moment right now, which is really cool. Karita Kent was a nun in Los Angeles who made she was a teacher, taught silkscreen classes to the other nuns, but also to the community. Did a lot of amazing work with text. These were her art department rules, which I think are really still apply to any kind of creative endeavor, especially number 7, if you're ever lost or trying to figure out what to do. The best way to figure that out is to go through it and work through it. I encourage you all to look this up and post this in your bathroom so you see it every day. This is some of her work. Predominantly silk screens, dealing with contemporary culture, a lot of religious text, But she also did a lot of like photocopying and taking pictures and taking text and stretching it and then exposing it on the silk screens. But 2-color print, beautiful. Negative space, incredible. And those letters just, they drive me insane. More of her work. Another one, really big one for me, Margaret Kilgallen, painter, San Francisco, 90s, really influenced by train graffiti and handmade signs, but just, again, big shapes. She worked in a library for a long time repairing books, a real love of like letter forms. Just beautiful drawing, beautiful simplicity. This was the sort of stuff that I would look at in books and magazines and just get me excited to go draw, you know. It's like if you're into skateboarding, you watch a skateboard video, it gets you all psyched up to go jump down some stairs, and I would look in a book and get excited to go draw a tree or something. And the scale of that is just beautiful. And there's a really great Art 21 episode that you can find on YouTube about her work and her partner Barry McGee's work. It's definitely one of the best episodes of that. Really great. And this leads me to poster work. Silkscreen is like, I love silkscreen. I did a lot of silkscreen in school. It's a commercial process, right? Like there's a right way to do a silkscreen to make a print. But it incorporates design, again, economy of color, because you got to pay for the screens, you got to pay for the ink. What can you get done? If you can do it in 2 colors, why try 3? It's really appealing to me, and how it can be used for sort of communications that are beyond don't have anything to do with fine art. It's how can design communicate, how can an image communicate feelings and important ideas. The power of the poster. Something that's really exciting to me as a printmaker. A lot of these I forget where this one's from, but again, just, the rawness of those letters and the big shape is just really exciting to me. This might be the only thing I have in here that's not hand done, but just the design element in this is also just super exciting to me. The power of the poster. The thing that's really exciting to me about this that I remember looking at is like how that yellow just sort of defines the outside edge of the arm in the white shirt. And for some reason, like that resonated with me. It's like, oh, I don't have to draw an outline. I can just make the shape go right up to it, and that sort of unlocking something in my brain of, oh, I could figure out how to draw even less. This artist is, I'm going to mispronounce his name, Seymour Trask, graphic designer since like the 50s and 60s. You've seen his stuff everywhere, but I love him because he does these big illustrations, and he does them in linoleum cut, and you don't see a ton of that. But he's still going, I think. So now we're starting to get into my work. This was a bigger scale commission that I did for a coffee shop that opened, and it's hard to tell, but that purple flower and the bird, and there's some other things. Those are like pieces of plywood that are like hanging off the wall that we mounted. And just again thinking about how can I do this mural without using any lines at all, just shapes. I don't know how anybody makes a living as an artist. I have friends that do it. I have a lot of friends that do it. I don't understand how anyone does it. I do it by doing commissions, by selling prints, by doing illustrations, by saying yes to every email that I get. So there's a lot of different ways to do it, but I think there's ways to do commercial work and have it be yours and put some beauty into the world or put yourself into it without compromise. I've been lucky enough to be a member of this group of artists working mostly out of Los Angeles that does a mural program for elementary schools out there. It's called Operation Creative Freedom. A lot of these schools, underfunded, the first thing they're going to cut out is arts and music education. So there's a friend of mine's a third grade teacher out there, and he started this program where the kids who want to, it's extracurricular now, they'll do art projects on certain artists, and then he'll invite those artists to come and paint these murals at their school. And then we get to meet the kids, and it's really great. We've done 4 or 5 at this point. This was like the most recent one. This is on Catalina off of in California. And again, this was a big piece, but I was trying to figure out how to make something that kind of told a story with as little drawing as I could, like shapes. It was really exciting and fun to do. This is some more. I guess I'm starting off with like really big things, but this is a recent sort of installation. I did big wall painting with little cardboard critters running around. And I would say the coolest thing about making art and making that something that you do for the rest of your life is you meet a lot of other artists and you end up all kind of helping each other out. And I went to go see an artist talk by Chris Johansson one time. If you don't know Chris Johansson's work, he's one of my favorite painters, incredible. And someone in the audience was like, how do you make it? Like, how do you get shows? Like, how does it work? And he had the best answer. He was just like, well, here's what's going to happen. It's like, you're going to be in school, and you're going to put on an art show in your garage about, like, noses. And you're going to have all your friends be in it, and it's going to be art about noses, and you're going to buy a case of beer. You're going to have so much fun. It's going to be great. And then 10 years later, someone who's in that show is going to call you. They're going to be like, hey, you remember that show we did about noses? Well, now I live in Denmark, and I work for a museum, and I have a budget. And he's going to ask you to come. And that's really close to how it works. And it goes back to that Sister Carita thing of like, the only rule is work. If you're doing stuff, if you're working, you end up meeting people, and people see your work. And that's how I ended up in Germany painting a room like this, is because I met someone at a show, and we showed together, and we stayed in contact, and they thought of someone who could come and do something. And it's really important to be in the mix and to just try to do things just for the sake of doing it. Painted a little camper. It was really fun. I got to sleep in the camper while I was painting it. It was cool. Another camper. I've done a couple campers. I didn't really think about that. This was an arts festival, like a mural festival in Virginia. Got the idea to paint their camper. And it's kind of hard to see, but again, I was really thinking about this in like in a printmakerly way. The little gray parts, like around where it says nice, that's like the metal of the camper showing through, and I knew I could get that. It's like paper. It's like the free color when you're painting. And as you can see, all my painting is, I wouldn't call it painterly. It's very printmakerly. It's flat. I'm a big believer in the hardware store as the Oops Paint section as a really good art supply store. This was like a skateboard bowl that I painted, and I show this as like another example of like I could use that really great concrete color by just painting around it. And if you think if you can make decisions like that, then you actually just like cut down on how much you actually have to paint. To me, I'm like, oh, this is just a big silk screen. This is a big woodcut. I have to think about it in color separation. But I also wanted it to look like a Greek face, like those old faces that tell a story that they dig up. These are some little linoleum cuts. And again, it was like, I want to how can I draw less, but like sort of carve things out of a shape? Hands. I got really into hands for a long time. So this is a book. This is entering the section of the talk about plywood energy, which was one of the things up there. Really into what I call plywood energy. Plywood, this guy made these really simple furniture instructions using like a sheet of plywood. How can you make this strange furniture? And he chose plywood because, you can go to the hardware store and buy a sheet of plywood. It's really small. But that's from a book called Nomadic Furniture by Victor Papanek, student of Buckminster Fuller. But how can you make chairs out of one sheet of plywood? How can you make furnishings, useful things in your home, pieces of art, using common materials? And I'm no woodworker, but I wanted to make more woodcuts, but I wanted to do it in a way that was interesting to me. And I had a lot of scrap wood laying around, and it's how people used to make little skateboard ramps. And I just kind of got really interested in how can I make prints and make art and not have to go to the art supply store. And I started finding pieces of plywood, and instead of carving the wood with traditional tools or needing a press, I just started using a jigsaw to cut out sort of puzzle pieces. And I started this series of poster prints. And getting those sort of magical textures that you can't control is really exciting to me. I like being out of control a little bit, letting the wood take part in the creative process a little bit is really exciting to me. Can't get away from those big black shapes. Letters, I showed you the pictures of Kurita and some of the others. The letter forms, to me, are just so exciting. And how can you make an E look angry? There's so many times I'll scrap some work because, that I made the M too aggressive, And again, how can we get across an idea with doing as little as possible? I kind of like, getting those criticisms of like, you didn't do anything. Like my kid could do. I really love those kinds of remarks because there's so much you can say with so little. Yeah.
Do they sort of come in just in the process of composing, or is that the idea that generates it? Like, do you know that you want to have a word, or is it just part of what ends up becoming?
I would say most of the time, it's not all the time, but most of the time it's words first. Like I've noticed over the years, my sketchbooks have less like drawings in them and more, I don't know if it's also just being more domestic in my life these days. It's like if I open up my sketchbook, it's like grocery list, but then like a list of titles. I listen, I pick up a phrase from a book or from a song and just write it down. And that sort of is stirring around, and it becomes, how can I illustrate that? Or maybe I do have some drawings somewhere and I find where it can fit. And, sometimes I just really want to draw I want to draw something, but I also want to find a word for it too. I put this in because this is my favorite install shot. This was in Texas, a show of all that work, and that dog's name was Peyote. If you're ever in Marfa, Texas, there's a great gallery there called the Wrong Gallery, which is a really wonderful place. More plywood energy. I got really into making plywood cutout paintings and hanging them on the wall. This is probably 2 foot by 3 foot. Just a different way to make a painting. I love homemade signs. I love words. I love signs, and just making some things that could be signs for nothing or putting a little meaning into it. I'm just going to point out every time there's a big black shape and everything. I got really into making some like fake books, and this is like more titles come in. Like I'll just have a list of titles for books. I lived in California for a long time, and one of my favorite things to do when I lived in Berkeley was get coffee, go for a walk, and there's all these bookstores and record stores on the street, and it's Berkeley, so everyone has like cool college town. Yeah? I like to keep it pretty simple. I'm not the biggest bright color person, so I do love some traditional printmaking, black and red, blue. But I'm serious when I say the hardware store Oops Paint is a great resource, and I like going there and finding something and finding a way to use it. But I would say I try to use less black, but I keep going back to it. But anyway, like I would go to these used bookstores, and it being like a college town, I'd go to like the New Age section, and there'd be all these wild titles about, all aliens and dolphins and telepathic stuff. And I didn't think I needed to read all of those, but I liked knowing that information existed and that it was sitting there if I ever needed it. So I started making a lot of bookshelves like that. And I'm going to make covers and stuff too. I'm really interested in commercial work. I love records, I love posters, I love movies. Album covers are a big one for me. I love being able to do those. And if I can make it out of a linoleum cut or a wood cut, it makes me even more excited. This one was most musicians too, though it's hard to convince them sometimes that simpler is the way to go. I feel like I had to really convince them to do this, but this is one of my favorites. I love making tour posters. One of my favorite things. And this is where it gets into like computers. So it can make a woodcut, scan it in, move things around. I'm not afraid of the computer. It's a good tool. This is silkscreen. Again, it's like that green at the bottom is made from overlapping the blue and the yellow. So it's like a free third color there. Fourth, I guess. I just started making risograph tour posters. So I'll make some risographs, scan them in, manipulate them a little bit, and now you can send them to the band to put on Instagram or wherever they promote things. Typically, yeah. But the reason I got really into doing posters is because I had so many friends that were musicians. So I'd just be like, I'll make your flyer. I'll do it. I worked at a record store. People come in putting up flyers, and I'll be like, I'll make you one. I'll do it. I'll make a letterpress one. Yeah. Go ahead.
Is there a certain kind of music that you listen to, or kind of a vibe that you're channeling when you make those music posters? Do you listen to the artist's song and then do a design based off of how that feels?
No. Typically, I don't want to like illustrate someone's music, and I find they don't want that either. I play music too. That's why my name is on this one. And I made a point to like not listen to the band. I'd never heard of the band, and I didn't listen to them at all until I saw them play. I don't know why, but I find I don't really get. Usually, I can get a vibe. Like I have a little bit of an antenna up as to what people are into, but if they're coming to me, they kind of know what I'm going to do, and it serves me and serves them to just do what I feel like works. So these are some drawings. Sorry, I'm going to look. I'm on my time. We're doing good. This is kind of a fake book series, but I also think about these as like going back to that Far Side cartoon of like, this is my comics panel, and how can I get across a little idea or a little prompt in a way, I guess. Just a Mad Magazine reference there. I got very into, I started reading, I got really into like the Old West. Have you ever seen that television show, Deadwood? I got really into that show for a little while, and I got really interested in the Old West. And I read about a person named Agnes Lake, who came from a circus performer family. She was married to Wild Bill Hickok, and they would write these beautiful, flowery letters back and forth to each other. I don't really I'm not like an obsessive person or whatever, but I started using Agnes Lake, which, what a beautiful, insane name that is, as sort of this vessel for drawings and for advice. All her letters were so beautiful. And these were sort of from a book I was doing about Agnes Lake as the character, but my own version of what that was. This is a painting. It's in the show here. Again, just trying to think about drawing and words and what paint I had on hand. And plywood energy. These are all on found pieces of wood that I cut down and made panels from. This is an example of what I've called before, like my hardware store psychedelia paintings, where I love finding this paint or discarded colors that didn't work for someone's rec room or their bedroom or something, and giving them a little abstraction. I mean, in some of these, there's no drawing. The drawing is only the letters. At least whatever people would traditionally think of as drawing. I got really interested in spray paint and using spray paint for paintings, but in a way that was interesting to me. I don't really, I'm not a graffiti person. It's not that interesting to me. But how can I use spray paint as a sort of a lo-fi airbrush sort of a thing, and cut stencils and make shapes that way that were, again, making myself a little more out of control and going on a big scale for paintings. This was from a show in Indianapolis. There's an art center there called the Tube Space, and they gave me a big garage to put on a show in January. So it was very cold. But I got to use it as a studio for the month leading up. So I got to make all these paintings, and they told me they didn't want anything nailed into the wall for the art show, which was an interesting approach. So I made sort of these signs and tables for the paintings. That was kind of the sign that was out on the road to lead people in. I'm interested in humor. I'm interested in laughing at life, and I feel like there's always a little sadness in the joy. So this was, when I was in college, this was my favorite sweater and my favorite shirt, and I've had it hanging up in my studio for many years, and I put it on view in this kind of classy exhibition because it was so important to me, and I priced it at $1 million because that's what I thought I would sell it for. And what nobody knew, what I'm telling you now, is that in the corner, in the pocket of that shirt, there's a picture of me wearing the shirt, pretending to smoke a cigarette, which you would only discover if you paid me $1 million. It did not sell. This was also in that show. I'm interested in putting objects together, too, that are confusing and mysterious, and we can make our own connections with. this was sort of this gallery had a little stage on it, and I was trying to find an interesting way to use the stage. So I made this sort of altar. And that piece in the background, sort of, it led to doing some more work with like photocopies and printouts and collage. Really interested. I love all kinds of printmaking, and a photocopy is kind of a print, and there's ways to deal with that traditionally with like wheat paste, and so I wheat paste them onto these panels to sort of elevate these this pretty humble material, and that would carry over into being exposed to the risograph machine, which is essentially really cool photocopier that you can has all those great qualities of an old Xerox machine, but with the benefits of speed and different colors, and there's a certain richness to it. But they're still cheap and easy to make, so you can give them to all your friends. So I would make these flyers, posters, and then mount them onto wood. Again, power of the poster really coming from thinking about a lot of the 60s headshot posters, where it feels like you used to be able to go into a store and buy like a poster of like a pot leaf or something, or a poster of like a peace sign, or it wasn't advertising something, or it wasn't somebody like slam dunking. It was an idea, and that's where I'm interested in that, the sort of mass communication of the poster. Some of these definitely take like the form of flyers you'd find like on a telephone pole or on like a bulletin board. These were, believe it or not, like these last two anyway, those were commissioned by New York Times for like an op-ed piece, when everyone was, I think this was deep COVID times, I think, which led to some other commissions for a music festival that I made these flyers for. This is kind of a deep cut. I made this for a record label that's in Bloomington, Indiana. Bloomington, Indiana is where John Cougar Mellencamp lives. If you're familiar with John Cougar Mellencamp, one of his big hits is Jack and Diane. And there's a famous line in Jack and Diane where he talks about sucking on a chili dog behind the Tasty Freeze. It becomes graffiti a lot in Bloomington, and they paint over it, but it's kind of funny. And this was a deep reference because that's a hot dog. Making these flyers is quick and fun, and making up fake band names it's really fun, and it's a way to communicate these ideas and keep the juices flowing, I feel like. But I got interested in collage and photocopies and sort of taking that more into like my art show work, mounting these on wood panels. And that's, again, it's a cool thing to discover some new ways to work and how those can carry over into what you're working on. We're getting into some of the, I've done a long series of 18 by 24 silkscreen prints, and my, kind of going back to that head shop idea, I called the series posters for their promotional posters for the present moment, kind of like a Zen sort of reference, but a way to explore these ideas of how to interact with the world and become a person in ways that you can express some humor, some sadness, some anxiety. And I sell a lot of these prints like online and in other places. And a lot of it's just ways to make these ideas and make them quick. And I'm a big believer in if you have the energy to capture that energy and to keep things spontaneous. This was a series I did for a friend's classroom, sort of educational posters in a way. And again, I feel like restraint is such an important thing to have. Like I really wanted to do a black outline. I really wanted to draw that line on the palm of the hand, but leaving it out was such a joy. So that I could make this with only drawing 3 lines. It's great. I feel like so much of the things I think about is how to actually make less art, like to make it be more about decisions than activity. So it's more of that series. And I've been doing them for about 15 years. These silk screens are probably, I don't know, there may be about 50, 60 in the series. And a lot of these, and some of them, like this particular one, just started as like literally on a little Post-it note. But being able to blow it up and sort of capture that spontaneity and the quality of drawing is very interesting to me. Big black shapes. I always wanted this to be in a movie, or like saw this as a movie poster. I love thinking of different uses for some of these images. These are some more recent linoleum cuts. Again, thinking about how to use big shapes, sort of carve the image out of it like a sculpture. This one's in the show down the hall. I have a friend who's an amazing screen printer, and he recently purchased a giant press so he can make really big silk screens, and he printed these for me. So these are maybe 2 foot by 3 foot, and I like things going big a little bit. It's nice. This was sort of an experiment with. I want to make these sort of photocopy works, these non-fine art material pieces, but I don't want them to just be photocopies. I don't want them to be digital. I want them to have a little tooth and feeling to it. So I did a bunch of research and found an offset lithographer, like a old school offset lithographer in my town that will do low runs. So I was able to make a lot of these really big posters for very cheap, and to be able to send them to people or offer them for really affordable prices. Printmaking is really exciting to me for the democratic possibilities of it, how you can make art accessible to people to live with. These were actually like very small linoleum cuts that I enlarged and then screen printed, so I would get, it's kind of a cheater because I was able to get that linoleum texture and tooth and feel, but on a larger scale, and to blow it out a little bit, to lose control just a little bit. Well, this is my last slide, and this kind of comes back to the Jam Econo part of it. This is the rental van and the artwork that's in the art show here. This is me in my driveway sort of packing it up. And to me, it is kind of a callback to sometimes I approach art and art shows and making things as pretending I'm in a band, pretending I'm going on tour, and you can learn a lot from not thinking so much of yourself and making the boxes, packing the van, getting on the road, drinking the coffee. I think of art shows sometimes as like an album, and like, oh, well, this show is like my acoustic record, and this one is my psychedelic record. And if you give yourself that freedom to experiment, it takes the pressure off of having to make everything be your masterpiece. I think the freedom to be creative and make things and share it in the world is a huge gift you can give to yourself. And I hope people continue to do it. I hope some of you continue to do it. And it's a really great thing to have to do with yourself for the rest of your life. I hope that I get to do this. I get to draw pictures till I'm dead, because it's something I love to do, and it is a real gift. But I'm very glad that I got to come visit and talk to y'all. And if anybody would like to talk afterwards, I'll be here for a little bit. But thanks for your attention, and thanks for coming. Thank you. And thanks, Colin, for setting everything up. It's been a really great experience. Thank you.